diddly-divey too, wouldn't you? A kiddly-divey too, wouldn't you? A kiddly-divey too, wouldn't you?
It was just a neighborhood dance, that's all that it was, but oh, what it seemed to be. It was like a masquerade ball, with costumes and all, 'cause you were at the dance with me.
It was just a ride on a train, that's all that it was. But oh, what it seemed to be. It was like a trip to the stars, to Venus and Mars, 'cause you were on the train with me.
And when I kissed you, darling, it was more than just a thrill for me.
It was the promise, darling, of the things that fate had willed for me.
Now it was just a wedding in June, that's all that it was, but oh, what it seemed to be. It was like a royal affair, with everyone there, 'cause you brought all the world to me.
And when I kissed you, darling, it was more than just a thrill for me.
It was a promise, darling, of the thing.
All right, Bill, we're the only two here so far. We are a minute early, but might as well all the mics and everything.
Wow. Yeah. That's weird. I thought we'd have a couple of people.
Yeah, I actually thought tonight would be better attended than last week, but we'll see. We'll see how that goes.
Is there like a sign up or something where you can tell in advance who's,
Not really, not really. I would like something like that, and I think that it would be really nice to. I think there are two things that kind of play in here. First, I think that a lot of people are afraid of the technology, and so they just don't want to. They want to participate, but they don't want to participate in this format. And I also think that anytime you try and do something like this, you'll end up with this situation where you have a few people that are actually dedicated enough to show up, and 20 people that are dedicated into not really showing up.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, to be honest with you, as a complete neophyte with computer stuff, with technology, I mean, I clicked on the thing and it worked.
That's how it's supposed to work, right? Yeah.
I've had less trouble with this than I have had with Zoom or MS Teams or any of that.
Well, that's why I chose to use it. I use this almost every day. I stream. I have a show that I do, and then I use it for various other things too. And this is just like, this is great. Like, I can just give you the link, you click it. There's no passwords. There's no codes you got to know. And now it's meant for podcasting. So like, I can kick you out and I can mute you. You can't do anything about that.
Right.
Which is fine. Because we don't have a bunch of children in here yet.
Right. Wait.
I'm waiting, and but I kind of expect McCrae to show up. He'll probably be late again. I think he has. The thing is that with everyone kind of being in different time zones, there are guys in California or and Colorado that are just now finishing up dinner or eating dinner, and
Mhm.
so it's. I mean, you're in California, I think.
Yeah.
So, it's 6 o'clock there. So most people that would be interested in this are probably just now sitting down to dinner, or they're getting up from dinner, one of the two. So, um,
Well, yeah, but I mean, the, it would seem to me that there's kind of a way. Obviously, if somebody's at work, they're not going to leave work early.
sure.
If I were working now, I wouldn't be able to participate at this time. I'd
Hmm.
be arguing for a later time. But maybe poll people or put it on a thread in there saying, hey, how many people does this time work for? And how many people would an hour later, or 2 hours later, or an hour earlier, or whatever? My,
Yeah, I mean, I felt like I did kind of arbitrarily set it, but I wanted to set it because I mean, there's a couple of reasons. First, I didn't want it to be so late on this coast that I'm on. Well, I'm in Central, but the Eastern guys, it's
Mhm.
9 o'clock there, so they shouldn't be too big a deal. And then I didn't want it to be so early on the West Coast, so I was shooting for a good middle ground. I'm not sure that I hit it, but uh, it seemed like there were 40 people that said they wanted to be actively involved.
Mhm.
So many that we had two or three groups of 12 or however 20 or however many there
Mhm.
were, and now it's basically devolved to four active people and maybe 10 active commenters. So, which is about what I expected, to be honest. So,
Well, on an internet forum, yeah.
yeah.
But the truth of the matter is, even with the people that are not, actively participating every 10 seconds, they still might make a comment or they still might react to something. And the truth is, some of those people might be the ones who decide to build an airplane or, have a Hummingbird or something like that, what we've been talking about, that might be participants in the racing who that still may not be able or interested in the online in the video conference.
Hmm.
I mean, that's
Yeah.
just me talking out of my butt. I don't know for sure.
Well, and I make this, so this is recorded to YouTube at the same time, so
Mhm.
anybody can go back and watch it
Mhm.
anytime.
Yeah,
But if we're going to have people involved, we've got to get a core group of people
Mhm.
involved.
Yeah,
There's no way that I could do it. I don't have the knowledge, first of all, and I don't have the specific experience. You can't do it on your own. Hot Wings can't do it on his own. There's got to be
yeah,
it's got to be a real group effort, and we need to get that going on.
yeah. You're 100% right. I've got one little quadrant that I could bring to it. Not by any means the only guy that's ever raced, but we need
Mhm.
engineers and we need infrastructure people and all that, and we need engine guys. I really want to get that guy from Australia or any of the other engine
Yeah,
guys.
TP.
TP, whatever.
Yeah,
I don't know who he is. But if I don't know, maybe 5 in the morning in Australia right now. I don't know,
sure. Yeah, I
but
actually don't know.
we, we do
There are
need.
some Australian people on right now.
Okay, well, we do need engine people on
Mhm.
this. I sure know how to blow an engine up, but I don't know how to build one. You
I,
know,
yeah, I know how to build very specific engines,
yeah,
and none of them have two cylinders.
yeah,
So,
exactly.
um,
But uh, we've got some really good ideas, and I, for one, am you probably saw. I have to admit, I was embarrassed with not that many changes. There are a couple of existing airplanes over and above the Manette airplane that could be used for this. The little Gary Watson's Wind Wagon, which was in between the Hummingbird and the Genie's Teeny,
mhm.
that is about the right size. Or maybe it could be made even a little smaller. I don't know. I posted a sketch the other day of something really small just to get people's tongues
I saw
wagging.
that. I had to
You know, I,
comment on that
I don't even
because
know that it could be built, but that kind of a tiny little go-kart, that had room for everything is the kind of thing that I had thought, because that's really the only way that you're going to make something that is race worthy out of 30 horsepower or 40 horsepower.
Yeah. So
Did you hear from Leon? Is he going to be here?
Hot Wings.
Yeah, because he was talking about getting a new microphone and a camera.
Yeah, he got new gear, but the last thing I saw, let me just double check. I don't want to lie. I think he said earlier that he wasn't going to be able to make it. He had some stuff come up that he just could not do. I think it was actually something to do with working. He had a project or something that he just could not get away from.
Okay.
Let me track this down. I don't want to lie. Let me see. Yeah, it says it is looking like I will be unable to attend this coming Thursday meeting due to other project demands that have been in the works for nearly a year.
Okay.
He was going to post a tentative set of topics, but he hadn't had the time yet.
Mm-hmm.
In the short form, he wants to nail down. He thinks, and I agree with this, that we need to nail down an overall concept with a mission statement. Recognize that the whole endeavor is embryonic and some allowances may need to be made for the first few years. I agree with that. I think that it's, but I also agree that I also would say that it's very important to have good rules from the start, and then it saves you having to play catch up too much.
Yeah, we just when you're not doing what amounts to a spec race, when you're trying to allow different creativity, it exponentially gets harder. You can't just say, "Hey, take a Mazda Miata between these 2 years,"
Yeah.
and do this. And I very strongly believe it should be open to different designs, whether scratch built or Hummelbirds or any of that stuff.
Sure.
So, and that makes it to where the rules probably have to be a little bit more flexible to allow or potentially disallow stuff that turns out to be unsafe. You get some guy that has an airplane that's kind of marginal, and now you're going to be putting 3Gs on it instead of 2Gs or something, and turbulence and everything. And maybe cooler heads or wiser heads will say, "Hey, that wing spar on that airplane is not strong enough to handle any kind of maneuvering." A lot of my behind.
I'm going to take a second. We do have a couple of people watching on YouTube, and if you guys want to just comment, there's the box over there to comment. If you comment there, I can see it, and if it's something that's a question or something, I can put it up on the screen, and we can respond to it, and we can interact that way. So feel free to just say hi, even let us know you're out there. So I think the mission statement really needs to be in its broadest strokes. We already have it really.
Mm-hmm.
Small bore, V-twin, light airplane racing.
Yeah,
that's the mission statement. I think that he may have been talking more along the lines of what do we want to accomplish? What's the goal? And and I think that, or what kind of what metrics we need to see. But I think we're too far from that personally. I don't know.
It's early for that kind of stuff.
I think it's really early. Yeah.
Because somebody's already, forgive me for interrupting, but somebody
Sure.
already on one of the threads mentioned, hey, what about some kind of cross country race, or what about something that's not pylons and all that?
Yeah.
I for one wouldn't want to give up the pylons, because not out of ego, but because that is the type of venue where I see this as being of the most interest there. But however, I wouldn't want to constrain it to where nothing like that could ever come in. I think it's a second thing. And if you remember, I don't know how you are on aviation history or old air racing history, But, 80 years ago now, or 90 years ago, there were 2 or 3 different types of air racing that the same airplanes competed in. We had the Thompson Trophy and the Bendix Trophy. And, one of the Bendix was a cross-country race from LA to Cleveland, and the Thompson was the equivalent of the Reno pylon racing. And there were airplanes and pilots that competed the same airplane in each of those races. So if we have a little miniature pylon race for these little V-twin powered airplanes, whatever we decide on the reduction drives and all that other stuff, if we have a race for that, there's no reason whatsoever that there cannot be a separate, and they even did this at Oshkosh, by the way, if you remember historically, the Lowers-Baker-Falk was a cross-country efficiency race, what eventually morphed into the cafe type racing, I believe, of airplanes that would fly a certain distance or a certain large course beginning and ending in Oshkosh during the week, etc. There's no reason that stuff like that can't be added, but as an old promoter, I'm pretty sure that having them race in front of a crowd around pylons, that's something that's a little bit closer and more intimate than the other kinds of air racing. That's going to be the bread and butter of the places that want this to happen. And the people that want to get into it, that could, like me, can no longer afford to go get a Formula One racer or a T6 or Unlimited, any of that stuff.
So from a guy that's kind of been on the outskirts of aviation for a long time and just now kind of have the time and the wherewithal to actually get in it, I wouldn't want to give up pylons either. I think there's an excitement there that needs to be seen, and I think that it's I don't think that I would want to lose that. I like the idea that they were talking. So I don't necessarily dislike the idea of cross country if it's done as kind of its own standalone separate event. What I would say though is that you would want to be that would have to kind of be its own separate event. Mm-hmm. And then the pylon racing would be its own separate event. And then one of the things that Leon had talked about, obviously I wish he was here so he could kind of throw all this stuff out, is, and we had actually talked about in the first meeting, was the idea of a solo racing where it's just the one plane on the course at a time. And I think that actually makes a lot of sense, especially for new pilots to the series, right? So you're not going to turn them loose in traffic the first time, when we talked about that before, there's not really any super important need to rehash it, but I do think that those elements are important, and I think that, however, that can be kind of the core of it, and the idea really of trying to fly a tiny little AR-5 sized airplane from Nebraska to Arkansas, or not Arkansas, but Arkansas or Mississippi, that's a long way, and they'd have to make several stops along the way, and with minimal instruments, that would be very interesting. That the problem is that with minimal instruments, that means there's no IFR. It means that that you could potentially be grounded somewhere for hours or longer. So I don't know how that would work. The planes wouldn't carry enough fuel, really. But
these little airplanes, that nobody in their right mind is going to even think about any kind of weather instruments or whatever. There just ain't no way. But however, there are there are types of racing that, like I said, could be done with the same airplanes that could address what you're talking about, whether it's around the pylons by themselves. I don't know that's going to be a big crowd draw, but definitely what there really could be or should be is a template, a model, let's say, where if somebody's got one of these airplanes, on their own farm strip somewhere that they built one of these, there should be a template to set up a course using cars, school buses, outhouses, whatever, where it's clearly marked on their flagpoles or PVC pipe tripods with tarps around them.
Sure.
And that way they can go and document, because there should be onboard cameras in these things. A camera doesn't weigh an ounce.
Yeah, I think we all agreed on that.
Yeah. So now what you can do is you can have that pilot demonstrate his or her skills and get the practice out there by themselves, and maybe have a competition if you have enough data telemetry and all that to prove that they're following the rules with their engine displacement or RPM limiters or whatever it turns out to be. Once you get to that point, then you can have a solo contest where you get people all around the country who are essentially flying around the same course because they've set up the same course out on a dry lake bed or in farm fields or whatever it is, and compete over lap times or whatever it is. That it gets a little bit clunky, and you have to have a good template to do it and a way to prove it. But that's something that would both be a training exercise, something fun for the pilots to do with the airplanes, and since guys like you and a couple of other people have commented about how valuable all the streaming stuff is and the YouTube stuff, being able to stream that stuff and to promote the sport that way, and to say, here's Don Walker out in his place flying his airplane around the course.
Sure.
And then 2 weeks later, here's Bill out there in the dry lake in the desert trying to do the same thing and go faster than him, taking advantage of higher density altitude or whatever it is.
Yeah, so it'd be something like a time trials, right?
Yeah, time trials. And the other thing though is there's a huge opportunity here, because there's nothing else doing this right now, where we could take these same little airplanes, little V-twin powered airplane, and say, we're going to have a contest for members of this racing class. So it has nothing to do with pylons. We're giving you 5 gallons of gas. What's the furthest you can go in the least amount of time? Here's a scoring rubric, and a formula for the relative weights of time versus fuel used or versus miles covered. And so now you get, because remember, there are FAI aviation records that have been set. One of my EAA chapter members here in LA has set a record between LA and Guadalajara, Mexico, in a very easy that still stands. So you can have events like, okay, the Denver to Flagstaff run on the least amount of gas, where there are 1, 2, or 10 different people doing it, but it's a straight line race. And who's going to do it for the least amount? And this particular race in Denver has been sponsored by the Denver Bank and Trust, where the one in Kansas will be something totally different. So there's all sorts of opportunities for that sort of stuff that build on the same platform, the same aircraft and engine that could be done. And it becomes efficiency racing with the same equipment and the same investment, basically. And maybe the same engine or maybe a similar engine, still inexpensive, to do 2 or 3 or 4 different events. That'd be pretty cool. And you get a lot more interest in that, because you're going to get one guy that is only interested in the straight line racing, doesn't want anything to do with pylons. And then you can get some other guy that wants to be Lyle Shelton and just roar around the pylons and can't afford a Bearcat, and doesn't care about the straight line stuff. But they're still members of the same organization. So to me, that there's opportunities there.
Okay, I like all of that, and what I'll do is when I get a few minutes, I'll try and if Leon doesn't do it first, I'll rewatch this portion and list that out, so we put it into a post on in the Formula I forum. Okay. So that's all good stuff. What else did Leon want us to kind of cover? Because I think that I don't know that we need to really talk a whole lot more about that. That all sounds great. Um, so he says we need to start down the path of developing the engine rules, and so here's where I kind of I in my line of work I never won a race because of an engine, but I certainly lost a bunch of them because of an engine. That's for sure. Um, and so the engine is what it is, right? Like you can that's a mathematical equation of how much it costs, how much power it produces, and how many of them are there in the world. Can
Mhm.
you supply? Can Are there enough to be supplied? I love that people get wrapped around the axle about engine stuff, but the engine is the least important part of the airplane to me. Um, the most important part in my mind is what are these airframes going to look like? How much are they going to cost?
Mhm.
And how quickly can they be built by by a caveman in a
Mhm.
cave, right?
Safely.
So those are the three things that I think are more important to actually
Mhm.
having a series than anything else.
Mhm. Yeah,
Um,
and the other thing is most people don't realize. I mean, you ask an old glider guy like me, the the, the drag's more important than the horsepower. I mean, yeah, the
sure,
airplane can't take off without the motor, and a better engine's going to win, all other factors being equal. But there's more
but they're
there's more
rarely equal.
well there's more to be gained by drag reduction than there is. I mean, as you know, as
Sure.
a racer, getting an
Hmm.
engine to make more power, there's this exponential curve of time and cost versus increase, and drag is a straight 1-to-1 ratio usually. Uh, so to me, I agree with that on the airframes being more important, particularly because the the airframes can be used and successful regardless of what engines wind up actually being selected.
Sure.
If all of a sudden somebody says, "Oh no, we have to do this with just Kohler engines only. We're not no longer taking Briggs and Stratton," you're not obsoleting the airplanes. You're not throwing anybody out of racing,
Right.
or the other way around. Allowing another small bore or small block V twin. So
Right.
to me, as you said, the engine's the engine, and we can and should put parameters in that to make it to where nobody's going to spend 5 or 10 grand uh, on an engine after they buy it to try
Sure.
and win a plastic trophy and a 6 pack of beer.
Right.
I'd like to see people
Right.
spending a couple of grand on an engine. That's within an average guy's reach.
Sure.
You buy an engine, whatever it is, whether you own it or have to buy it new or whatever, fine. And a couple of grand worth of stuff and tuning and tweaking and maybe an extra bearing on the prop if it turns out the crankshafts aren't any good. All that stuff, sure, no problem. But 8 and 10,000 on a something that's supposed to be the poor boys racing, you know, that I would argue against. So
Sure. Yeah.
and
I would
the same
agree.
and the same for an airframe. I I don't want to. I would not want to interfere with anybody's creativity. But I don't know if you've been watching the video series been posted on our forum. Red Jensen, a guy up in Lancaster here in California, is an aerospace guy. He's building this all vacuum bagged carbon Formula One racer, which I hope to God there's a Formula One series for him to compete in because it looks like a gorgeous airplane. But because he's obviously a composite guy for a living, and what he does just offhandedly is stuff that would take some of us years to figure out. I wouldn't want it to be required to put that much effort into an airframe. I want somebody with a pop rivet gun and a hacksaw to be able to at least get
Right.
somewhere near this. Not what there may need to be some machine parts and all that. Of course, we're,
Sure.
we're not we're not trying to build genies teenies, where everything was done with an axe. But we're the Moni stuff, the Hummelbird stuff. that kind of stuff. What is it? Flat Iowa just made a post yesterday that I commented on, that he's got a whole busload worth of really good spar wood, you know, and I'm thinking, I mean, literally, he's got hundreds and hundreds or thousands of board feet of wood that he reclaimed from a gymnasium or whatever, but it's 1950s era perfect Douglas fir that's usable for spars. And so a guy that's a woodworker that wants to build the Luciole or the Pick 26 or that sort of stuff, that should be in there too. So that, but it should be
Okay.
inexpensive. You shouldn't. Carbon is all well and good. I love it. I've flown carbon airplanes too. I just wouldn't want that to be the minimum entry barrier.
Yeah. So where I would, I guess where I fall on it is, I would say that for the cavemen out there, you put out, or we need to get a board together and have a considered vote, I guess, or come a collaboration to determine, say, 4 or 5 stock designs. Moni, the not Volksplane, what am I, the Hummelbird,
Mm-hmm.
or a version of a Hummelbird, or but basically 4 or 5 stock designs that you can go kind of get plans for, but you're gonna modify it,
Mm-hmm.
um, and those will be for the guys that are true cavemen that are gonna tape this drawing to a board and build it like a model airplane,
Mm-hmm.
and then have a evaluation board for anything else. But anything can go, right. Like,
Mm-hmm.
if you come up with a plan for a new small delta dike that's somehow aerodynamically super efficient and going to run on V twin, great, submit the plans first, so that
Mm-hmm.
somebody that knows more than I do can look at it,
Mm-hmm.
2 or 3 people, and say, look,
Yeah.
we think this is going to be too dangerous. We would rather not have you show up with it, and us say no, right? That
Or
and
in or in reality, you would have this board, this design board or design committee, look at
mhm,
that and sit the person down and say, look, your stabilizer spar is too thin. You
even better.
got to add another 20 thousandths worth of aluminum in that
Sure.
or whatever it is, because if you show up with that, we're going to put sandbags on it, and we don't think it's going to make it. But
Right. And so I like that. I like
and
that
they're
a
all,
lot.
and they're also, in my opinion, there should be another pathway where somebody can put together something that's really weird and say, here's the video of this being tested with sandbags, and here's where the
Hmm.
sandbags were put, here's the weight, here's a picture of my cousin, the local sheriff's deputy, swearing that these were real sandbags or fertilizer bags or whatever.
Right.
And
Not foam.
yeah, and we're going to sandbag this airplane I'm demonstrating that it can pull 6 Gs or whatever it is.
Hmm.
That also, there's really no reason to stifle that type of creativity,
Sure. And
because
I
we're
don't
going
want to. I don't want to at all. But I think that you have 2 kinds of guys.
to. Hmm.
You're gonna have cavemen in a cave that just need a picture to post on the wall and build it.
Hmm.
And then you're gonna have artists that are gonna do whatever they want to do. And we need both types. I
Hmm.
encourage, and I think that and actually I really like what you just said there. I think that whatever comp board that we put together, the comp board or the competition board, it needs to be more oriented towards being inclusive, getting these designs in, right? Like, not
Hmm.
just saying, look, that's stupid, don't do that, but taking
Hmm.
a look at it and going, look, we have a 450-pound airframe limit, and you're going to be at 550. So let's take a look at this and see what's going on here, and see if we can make this work for you.
Hmm.
And basically the volunteers, because we can't call this a series, right? I mean, it's really It's a bunch of volunteers getting together to try and put something together that may end up being something. So this volunteer comp board um, should be available to help people
Mm-hmm.
not design an entire airplane for
Mm-hmm.
somebody,
Mm-hmm.
but say, a guy comes by and says, "Hey, look, I've only ever flown tricycle gear airplanes, and I really want to go. I really want to do this. What do you guys recommend?" Well, maybe that's a I don't actually know what that would be, but maybe it's a KR2 or KR1 with the
Mm-hmm.
tricycle.
Mm-hmm.
As long as you can build it light enough and clean it up and all that. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't know because it's not my I'm not an aerodynamicist. I'm
Mm-hmm.
not an I don't design airplanes at all. Um, but I think if you had if we take that path, I think that's the right path
Mm-hmm.
to take. And I think that Leon would agree if he were
Mm-hmm.
here, and I'm pretty sure McCrae would agree as well. Um, that you know what we're trying really to do is we're not trying to reinvent the wheel. We just need to downsize the wheel.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Exactly. What
So.
one of the nice things, we started this. I was very strong in promoting a derivative of the Moni.
Hmm.
It's relevant to what you mentioned because there are three different landing gears for that same airplane that are all proven to work.
Hmm.
So, what you said about somebody who wants a tricycle geared airplane, but in the Formula One racing, when I was involved, which is many years ago, we had a couple of two or three, tech crew members or four tech crew members that had aerospace credentials and exactly what you said. They would not sit down and design an airplane for you for free, you know, but they would work with you and they would on one hand they would I mean one guy would come to your house while you were building the airplane and kind of look over your shoulder to make sure you weren't doing anything stupid. And another guy would sit down and run a couple of calculations for you just on a pro bono basis, to say, hey, your airplane, I've determined that your airplane will fail at 5.4 Gs or whatever it is based on what
Hmm.
you gave me. And then those same people, that same tech board, they were there at Reno or wherever the race was, and they were and even some different people that had different qualifications. And they're, as I mentioned before, they're there lurking around, looking at each other. And if they see something that ain't right, whether it's hardware or design or whatever, they become the authorities there on a safety basis that, we don't think this airplane's ready to race.
Hmm.
So I think a tech board, and it would have to be more than one person, obviously, because you don't want all that responsibility or volunteer hours on one person. But on our forum and in our group, we are blessed to have several people with high end engineering experience and aerospace people and vehicle design people and all that. So I think once this class gets started and it demonstrates that there's people who will build something and will do something, I think several of those people step forward and say, "Hey, I'm not taking any liability or any risk here, but I'll run a calculation for somebody, and
Right.
here's the liability release that's 10 pages long that promises that your heirs won't sue me. We'll have to
Right.
have that." But
Right. No. Yeah, you do. Yeah, that's absolutely right.
guy, we do have the people who have that credibility and that experience. So I think that's the least of our problems. It's just a box that needs to be checked because it'll have to be. I don't want to be racing next to anybody whose airplane hasn't been looked at by someone like
Sure.
that, and I'm sure they don't want to be racing next to me.
Sure. Yeah, I've got a. I'm. Give me 1 second. We got some comments over on Facebook, and from this fellow Adam who is listening, and I'm posting them to YouTube right now so we can all see them.
Is that Adam from
And
Utah?
uh, it's Adam. I'm not really sure.
Is he on our forum?
Um, let's see. Adam Zachary is his name.
That I don't know. Well, I don't know his last name, but we've got a guy in our forum. His handle is ADDAON.
Okay.
I've met him. He's from Utah. He's an intelligent guy, knows what he's talking about.
Yeah. So he's talking to me that, or he's telling me that I can stream to other. Yeah, I actually know that I can stream to other platforms. I just didn't tonight. For some, I have to stream it to my personal Facebook, and which is actually fine. But he's in Canada. He's not in Utah. He just messaged me. He's in Canada, so he's watching us here, but he's listening to us somewhere else. All right, so let me.
Okay.
I'm gonna. You can read his comments over there in a comment section if you can see that, and then let me.
No, the only comment I've got is you and I talking just before this stream.
Okay. All right. Let me. Okay. Let me. It's. Oh, you're. So what you're gonna do is. Let me go back streaming. So what you're going to do is up there at the top, you see it should say something like comments and private chat.
Oh, okay. Comments. Got it.
Yeah, you just click comments, and he's so I've just basically copied his message there, and I'm just typing it in to I'm just copying pasting it from the yeah. So let me just I'm actually having some technical issues here, so let me and enter. There's the rest of it, and then here is the last of it. There we go. So basically, he's saying that let's see. Well, apparently I cut off part of his first message. He's wanting me to stream to YouTube and Facebook simultaneously. I can do that. Yes, the 10 commenters you speak of are important. They can act as promoters of the event. Spread the word to others on forums. Yes. I think he was talking about. I didn't actually say 10, Adam. It's just I'm a big believer in streaming and social media these days from my racing career. I did not adopt it early enough, and I should have, and I regret it. So anything I'm involved in going forward is going to have that as a component. And then let's see, we're going to put this up right here. Definitely keep pylon racing. Cross country would be nice too, like you say, separate event. The solo racing is a great idea. His name's Adam. Yes, start it with stock designs for small bore V twins, and let it. And he says, and let it grow from there, and have an ongoing tech team that. And then I got that. No, basically it was just ensure safety. So yeah, Adam, that's all good stuff, and that's kind of where we're talking about, or what we're talking about, and I think that's the direction we're going to have to go. And I know that Leon wanted us to get some direction, and I think that last time we were kind of stumbling around talking about what we wanted it to look like and what it might be, and a lot of concepts. But I think that we just to this meeting we're just, and fortunately there's only two of us, so it's really easy to have a meeting of the minds. So I don't know anything, and so I have to listen to you.
Well, God, no. I tell my wife I know everything, but she knows better than that. one of the things that Leon had mentioned, I think,
Mm-hmm.
that bears uh, adhering to, whether he does it or we do it or somebody else does it. I think a fairly concise mission statement is important to have, and we'll have to fight through people disagreeing with that or wanting to add something or delete something from it. But
Mm-hmm.
as with most endeavors and most organizations, having a mission statement that just says, here's the basic thing of what we're trying to do, and that leaves
Mm-hmm.
room for details or other components, but that sets, I guess, the big picture stuff. We're going to start off with the small block engines of 700 cc's or was some
Mm-hmm.
arbitrary number, and it has to be over 100,000 of those engines have to have been produced. All of that sort of stuff, and a single place aircraft that is easy to build, and that it costs that the airplane costs the approximate of X number of loaves of bread in 2024 dollars, some parameter.
Sure.
That kind of big picture ones and zeros stuff. I'm happy to draft something. I don't want to be the only voice in this, but I'm happy to draft it. I'm happy to let somebody else draft it, and we can go file on it from there. But that would be something to move forward with, because for better or worse, it will attract and keep some people involved, and there'll be some other people that go, oh well, my only interest was in if they allowed Volkswagen engines, or my only interest
Right.
is if they were all made out of boron fiber and we could put 100,000 into an airframe.
No, you're right.
Fine,
You're
those
right.
people may not be there,
Exactly.
but for the majority of us, to have, because this, and basically the mission statement should say, this is specifically intended from a clean sheet to be the average Joe with a six pack, hopefully not racing with a six pack, but an average guy that would be the kind of guy that started with go karts, and the kind
Mm-hmm.
of people that started the small dirt track sprint cars 50 years ago, kind of stuff, before even that got expensive. That's the target market, I guess. That should be in the mission statement. It sounds exclusive rather than inclusive, but I think maybe mentioning that this is for an average person of average means, and that the one of the primary things is for it, no matter what happens, for it to remain affordable to somebody of average means, and that way you don't get this elitist deal where the same way unlimited air racing started out, and at the end of World War II, you could buy a P-51 with a tank of gas for $1,000 or whatever, $500, whatever it was. And so somebody of only slightly above average means could buy one and go racing. And now look what happened because of the
Yeah.
cost.
Yeah. I mean, that's definitely the reality of the situation for sure. I think that from my point of view, I really like Formula V because the engines are relatively cheap.
Mm-hmm.
The part, they've been around forever. That's a proven formula.
Mm-hmm.
I like Formula V, but the problem is that Formula V and Formula I, and none of these can stand alone. You're not going to base an entire air show weekend or even a race weekend event out
No.
in wherever based on one series. So you have to start with the blocks, right? They're just building blocks, and you have to start with, which is why I'm interested in furthering a series that I would not personally be that interested in running myself, right? Because I think they're cool. Don't get me wrong, I think they're cool, but I would be more interested in a new Formula V. I can't get what I want unless I help you guys get what you want, so I'm all in. I want you guys. I want this to succeed. I want this to be something that's um,
You're talking about Formula V cars or airplanes now?
Formula V airplanes. I
Oh,
really like Formula V airplanes.
yes.
Um,
Well,
I
but,
would I would actually really like to see more Busby Mustangs, right? Um, um, well, now I'm drawing a blank.
Oh, the
The other,
Sonorai.
the Sonoray, well, a light and a modernized Sonoray, right? A
Well, that's the
KR
only
one.
that's the only Formula V airplane that there really ever was. So Steve Whitman made a one-off called a V-Wit, but the
Yep.
vast majority of Formula V air racers, Jim Vliet knows a lot more than I do, but
I
to
wish
my
you would get
recollection, it
into
was all Sonorai once.
There were some other ones, but I think they were later. But the Sonoray was too heavy
Mhm.
against its competition, and so I would like a modernized version of a Sonoray.
Mhm.
I would like somebody to take a look at what they did and say, okay, this is too heavy. This, why
Mhm.
did we do it that way? And I think that Jim has made a lot of good points in that, you know, because and this is something that applies here as well, is that when we're looking at this, they learn so much, right? Like they want the tanks down in the wing roots so that you have a far less chance of the
Mhm.
gas getting all over the pilot in a
Mhm.
crash, right?
Yeah.
You want a really good safety capsule around the pilot because people were having really traumatic leg injuries and dying from really what should have been survivable low energy crashes. So I think that they learned a lot. We need to modernize that, right? But we're not going to do that. None of this stands alone. And so I'm all in helping the Formula I guys. I will do
Mhm.
whatever job I'm needed to do. I might even build one um, just to pump up the numbers, right?
Well, if you'll forgive me for interrupting,
Sure.
I don't know that there is ever going to be. I would love it, but I don't know that there is ever going to be a race weekend kind of event like what they had at Reno. Um, Other than one event, if they put it in Bonneville or St. George or wherever they're trying to move it now. But the point being, in my opinion, the Formula I class is the sweet spot, and the big breakthrough is that's going to be something you can go to any exist or one of hundreds of existing air shows and say,
Mm-hmm.
hey, in addition to your aerobatic shows, in addition to your Drunken Farmer Act, in addition to your static displays, in
Mm-hmm.
addition to whatever, we can bring air racing to your little airport that you never could have had it before, ever,
Mm-hmm.
ever, ever. And
Right.
that, to me, that's the big breakthrough. That's what makes this work on the whole other end, not the participant end.
Mm-hmm.
On the participant end, it's because it's cheap. On the venue end, it's that you get somebody at a municipal airport's got an air show, a local Kiwanis Club or Lions Club or whoever's putting on their air show, city council, and you tell them that their star of their show can now be an air race in addition to all the other stuff that brings people there. That's where your huge gain is going to be.
Mm-hmm.
The equivalent of Bonneville Speed Week with 10 different classes of airplanes showing up and all that. Nothing would please me more. I'd love it.
I don't foresee
Feel
a
sorry.
race weekend. So I have a different impression of a race weekend. I see, but based on like what kind of race weekends I would have, where we would have a main series and a support series, right?
Oh, I see.
So like, I don't know anywhere where you could run currently, and I know that this has been said by people multiple times. I don't know anywhere where you could run the Formula One planes where people would actually go see them because they just require so much room and all of that. So that's why I'm far more interested in the um, in like that Formula V. Keep it in that where it's a 2 mile or 3 mile or not 3 mile, but 2 mile and a half roval,
Mhm.
or trioval, where the planes they're fast, they fly fast together, but they can still maintain that 500-foot separate, which is all the things that Jay, um, I can't pronounce his last name, um,
Vliet.
Vliet, thank you, Jay Vliet has said. Um, I like everything about what he said. The problem is that I think that he is disgusted with it or disappointed, or it's hard to figure out what's going on. But it just seems like he doesn't have the energy to
Mhm.
try again, and which is unfortunate. I really wish we could get him to make this meeting because I think that it might
Yeah.
help. Um, but in all forms of racing that I've done, there's been a small bore class and a big bore class. You know, and the small bore guys go out and they just fight, and usually they're really close together, and it's kind of a fist fight from flag to flag, and it's very exciting. Even though they're not going that fast, it's
Mhm.
very exciting to watch. And then you have the slightly bigger competitors come out. They're faster, they get a little more separation, um, but there's much more much more long range overtaking. With the who gets this run down the back straight that can make it
Mhm.
happen. I think that you need both, and I'm kind of we're kind of in Wonderland here talking about it, but I would really like to see that. I think that general aviation needs it. General aviation um, is general aviation. All the general aviation pilots I know fly 10, 15 hours a year sometimes. A lot of them, if they, well, I shouldn't say all. Some of them only fly 10 hours a month. Some of them fly 10 hours a year. And that's
Mhm.
terrible. You've put all that time and money into an airplane and you're getting your ticket, and maybe you retire from, a couple of these guys retire from airlines. And then they don't have anything enjoyable to do with it because
Mhm.
all they can do is gas up their Cessna at, I think current price is almost $6 a gallon, fly at 6.5, 7 gallons an hour to go get a hamburger or go on a small trip somewhere and then fly back. And you were talking about that last time with your Cessna, right?
Yeah.
That you
Yeah.
don't even leave that much.
No,
And
I, well, right, yeah, right now I have to think twice about putting that much expensive gas in an airplane. And I have said from the start, if I had one of these little V twin powered airplanes that I could go farting around with or whatever,
Mhm.
I'd be flying a lot more. But that's, any less expensive plane. The VW powered guys,
Mhm.
the Sonex people with their Volkswagens, they can fly
Yeah,
more than I can.
I
And
got
and I
one
can
right outside in the
right,
garage right now.
and I can fly more than the guy in my same position that has a 210,
Right.
because I'm using less gas than him. That's obvious. But
Yeah.
but the excitement of one or more types of competition with these airplanes that are that inexpensive, because all those retired airline pilots you're talking about and retired military guys, they could get into aerobatics.
Hmm.
They can go out and buy a Pitts or something like
And
that,
they do.
and they do. But that is pretty expensive to compete in aerobatics now, and especially any kind of real competition. Those guys have six figures and mid six figures in some of those airplanes.
Oh yeah.
That's why what
They have
everything
limited
that
number of places.
everything that have been pushing for promoting in these discussions on Formula I has been because we're breaking a cost barrier that is basically the barrier to entry that's making that I want to take this out of a niche, a tiny little niche in aviation, and put it into a medium-sized niche in aviation. It's never going to be a mainstream thing where everybody does it,
Oh no.
but tripling or quadrupling the size of the niche compared to Formula One or even what they did with Formula V, because there were even though the Formula V airplanes were less expensive, there were less of them than there were Formula One racers. And part of that is because Formula One went back to the 1940s. But the truth of the matter is they're still more expensive than putting together a racing Volkswagen engine. The parts were a lot more expensive than VW parts.
Yeah.
So
Still are.
whatever, right? So whatever it was that was preventing Formula V from achieving the success that it could have and should have achieved. Like I said, Jim knows a lot more about that, and I
Yeah.
don't want to step in front
Again,
of him.
I really wish we could get him to join in.
Well,
Maybe I need to send him a personal invite and convince him that the technology there's nothing. nothing scary about the technology. I'll tell him even Victor Bravo is doing it, and
Yeah,
he'll join it.
one geezer to another. I'll whatever, no problem.
Uh, but anyway. So, but I like the idea of Formula I because it is so accessible,
Mhm.
and the planes don't have to look terrible, right? Like
Oh,
the planes can look really good, and they're just small, you know.
you start with a, like I said, a Watson wind wagon or a Hummelbird kind of thing with a thinner, faster wing on it. Those are perfectly attractive. When you see a Hummelbird with the nice canopy on it or the new H5, derivative,
Hmm.
uh, that's not an unattractive airplane.
Right.
I mean, the wings a bit thick on them, because they were designed for minimalist flying.
Hmm.
But the way that it's done, it's two rolled cones of aluminum, built on a crutch. Basically, you build this big wooden crutch and you slide the bulkheads on it like an old model airplane jig. Um, and that's not a terrible way to build something.
I
But you
really,
don't wind up with an ugly airplane. They're prettier than the Moni, even though I happen to like the Moni. The Hummelbirds and Wind Wagons are prettier.
I really
Just
like
got
that
wide mount to
AR-5.
them.
If I were going to build one, I would try and replicate the AR-5.
Mhm.
That
Yep.
is just a beautiful airplane.
Hmm. Yep.
It is absolutely beautiful.
Yep.
Or the midget Mustang. Now, I got to tell you that there's something about that midget Mustang. It's just the everything about it is perfect.
Yep.
I would try and downscale. I would try and downsize that and make it look pretty. So, um, and I might. You never know. The thing is that what we're talking about is inexpensive enough. It's literally cheaper than. I mean, it's cheaper than a lot. I
Well,
mean,
one of our members on the internet forum, who's also one of my fellow chapter members, Murray Rosansky, he has a famous saying of his between us. He says you need to work the weight spiral backwards. Instead of making the airplane more complicated, that needs more parts and it becomes heavier and more costly, and then it needs a bigger engine to lift all that off the ground, you work that spiral backwards. You start removing stuff safely. You make it to where it can use a smaller engine, and then with a smaller engine, you need to reduce the weight and reduce the parts count and the complexity, and you start working that whole thing backwards. And I believe you wind up with something that is, it has to be safe, but it's closer to minimalist. And by doing that, and that's I think what Mike Arnold did on the AR-5,
yeah.
and that's what other people have done in similar efforts. So there's room for that too. And then you have stuff like what Columbon did with the Luciole, which is amazing, but you know that's a much more highly engineered airplane. That's not something for the caveman, with the drawing on the wall. That's somebody who's going to be a craftsman, because Columbon is really made everything exactly right. But his Cree, for example, the little Cricket twin engine airplane, something that is about the size and shape of that, but adjusted for one single V twin engine on it, that is about the size of what we're talking about that could make 130, 140 mile an hour racing laps. And again, that's a very highly engineered airplane. It's a fairly complicated build for something that small, but still, it's all aluminum and it doesn't give up anything to the composite airplanes.
Yeah, I can see all of that working out. I really can. And then you have like the Saber Wing, which is a KR2 clone that's
Mm-hmm.
got infused resin
Mm-hmm.
boat. So they actually build the boat in one
Mm-hmm.
layup that's resin infused and keep it real light. And the wings, I think, are resin infused as well, like the Dark Star guys are doing.
Yeah.
And actually talked to Bill about it because he's doing an LSA version. And I told him, I said, is there any way that you guys could build a boat that's narrow and take some weight out of the wings and just do away with some of the fuel capacity and that sort of thing. And you could almost get I feel like he could probably have basically a snap together model kit, single seat composite airplane, probably in the $20,000 range
Well,
for the delivery. I mean, for the
all-
pieces,
yeah.
not assembled, but
With all respect to Bill, who I don't know,
yeah.
there's another guy that we do know who has begun working on something just like that. Bob
Yeah.
Kuykendall up in Northern California. I can't remember the name of his project, but he is working on a small composite kit or a small composite airplane that could be kitted that
Hmm.
will be just like that, but it's smaller than Bill Clapp's airplane.
Yeah.
I wish I could remember. Bob, if you're watching, I'm sorry I don't remember the name of it, but he designed and built or is building this thing as it would actually, now that I think of it, it would be probably a very good entry into this class for a guy who likes composites and wants to work with composites. And Bob is extremely capable of making that, doing the molds, and he is in the business of selling, niche composite aircraft kits. I don't know if you've seen
Okay.
his glider. Have you seen the glider that he makes? The HP
Mm-mm.
24?
I've heard of that.
Yeah,
I actually think that you said something about it in a thread on
yeah.
another subject, and I meant to go look it up. I don't think I ever did.
Well, if you get a chance, it's HP Aircraft. Bob has taken over what used to be a line of all aluminum glider kits that were designed 50 plus years ago. And Bob now bought, I think, the rights and is doing all that stuff. But he's making composite glider kits now, extremely high performance, world class airplanes. It's for soaring. I mean, and it's
Hmm.
got a motorized version, but at the same time, he's building uh, something for small engines. I don't know if it was from a V twin or a half Volkswagen or something, but that would be one of the people that I'd be tapping on their shoulder, to be offering an alternative to the pop rivet stuff for the guys that want a nice, smooth little AR5 ish thing.
Yeah. Um, so I mean, I talked to Bill Clapp quite a bit, and I proposed it to him just kind of off the cuff. But I think that, and he's not the only guy out there that could do it. There's a lot of guys, the guys just down the street from me in Shelbyville that make the Orion, Arion, something like that. They make a composite plane, same kind of deal,
Mm-hmm.
except they mold the fuselage in halves and then they glue
Mm-hmm.
it together, and
Mm-hmm.
they could make a single seat, trimmed down, smaller version of that. And the most impressive one I saw for composites is there's a guy in Texas that 3D printed the pieces and then glued together a mold to mold a very easy boat all as one piece. And it was really impressive, and it came out like totally smooth skin, and it's every bit as good as moldless construction, but it may be a little lighter, and um, certainly a better surface finish. It took all of the sand and fill and sand and fill and sand and fill, took all that out.
Mm-hmm.
And then he just gave the molds away because he was done. He's only going to make one, and so
Okay.
but he has a program. Anybody could download this and print it, and the same thing could be true for
Yeah.
um, they've made various sizes of the very easy, so you could actually shrink that down to some degree. I don't know if you could make it. I don't know if you could power one with 20 horsepower, but they certainly powered one with a 50 horsepower
Yeah.
or a 60 horsepower Volkswagen at one point.
Yeah.
So
Well, but
I don't know.
the truth of the matter is that if you wanted to go down that road, get somebody to go with a scanner and go up to
Hmm.
that museum and scan the AR5.
Yeah.
I mean, it's already there.
Yeah.
There's an AR5 and an AR6. The AR6 is a Formula One. The
Hmm.
AR5 is, I think, a little smaller, and you could shrink it down just a little more to make a V-twin racer out of it. But
What did he power the AR5 at?
it
I don't remember.
was a 582 Rotax, made 64 horsepower, but it went 205 miles an
Right.
hour
Yeah.
or something with that. So even if you just unbolted that and put a 40 horse V-twin on it, you'd be at 160, 170 miles an hour with a
Right.
stock deal,
Yeah.
if the balance worked out. So
It's just such a pretty airplane.
yeah. Well, maybe his actually the guy to talk to. There's a guy on our forum that had posted a videos that he took, who's the one who I believe made the Mike Arnold videos, and I can't remember the guy's username, but he's posted several videos on our forum, and he, I believe, is a friend or associate of Mike's, and is probably in touch with the family. And the truth of the matter is, you could probably very easily get permission to measure and take some laser scans on that airframe. And now with CAD technology and the ability to create files off of those scans, and with
Hmm.
very little extra smoothing work, come up with a 3D model of it. That wouldn't be difficult at all.
Yeah, so I think that coming up with planes that are advanced are no problem, and coming up with planes that are caveman,
Hmm.
um, rock and stick.
Hmm.
I think that's no, I don't, I think that's no problem either. So, but I do believe that a comp board. I think really the first thing needs to happen is a comp board needs to be
Yep.
established, and then they need to approve. They need to discuss and approve and establish some approved designs, and then approved design parameters. Maybe not a maximum weight, but a recommended maximum weight, right? So that you don't have somebody that shows up with a 600-pound gorilla, something like
No,
that.
well, that's self-limiting.
Right? Yeah, because it won't take
Somebody,
off.
somebody who builds a 600-pound V-twin powered airplane, they're after the first race, they're not going to want to fly it.
Sure.
Or they're going to go out and buy a full VW or something like that, so they at least have something to fly. I think a minimum weight is important,
Yeah.
um, because not I mean, nowadays you could get a really good composite people that can build stuff at a very low weight that's perfectly safe,
Oh
but
yeah.
they're investing a lot of money, just like the race cars. I'm sure you tell me the same story.
Yes.
So if you put a minimum weight on there, or a minimum weight, you deprioritize or dissuade somebody from spending 50 grand on an
Yeah.
airframe kind of deal. Uh,
Yeah. I like that, and it
it's
makes
more
and it.
important than the maximum weight.
I think that if you figure out what a safe airplane with a proper, or maybe not proper is the right word, but with a reasonable um, uh, crash capsule, yeah, pilot capsule or whatever, so that the pilot stays safe. If you can establish what that weight should be and still have good
Mhm.
performance with the V twin, then that becomes the minimum weight. Because
Yeah.
if you go below that, you're probably cheating it up somewhere. You're maybe doing some unsafe things, and if you're over that, who cares?
Or as an
Um,
alternative, you should be able to submit the engineering to
mm,
the tech board and say, hey, look, you guys might think that this is not a safe crash cage, but I used Kevlar with this resin and this
right.
whatever, and here's the numbers that show that it should be, and that way you don't take people's creativity or technical advances. I just don't want people spending 50 grand on this.
Yeah,
You have an airplane that weighs 160 pounds that other people can't get
can't
near
afford to
in the race,
duplicate. Yeah.
whether it's safe or not.
So we had that happen. and this is just some arcane lore. I mean, they still exist, but now they're more common. Years ago, um, we had to have very specific side impact protection in the cars, especially on the driver's side. And some of the cars were allowed to run smaller tubes and just be lighter because they had a carbon fiber crush box.
Mm-hmm.
And it was this foam and Nomex hex filled thing that literally, when it was impacted, it crushed
Mm-hmm.
and absorbed all of the energy of whatever hit it. And it also, which the roll structure didn't do, it also was a solid piece, so that pieces of metal or composites razor sharp, anything that was kind of sharp that might cut through or go through the holes in the roll cage and cut through the door and all of that, would have less chance of getting into the driver and causing an injury.
Mm-hmm.
Those crush structures were expensive. I priced one for one of my cars, and it was $30,000, which was what my car cost. So it
Wow.
was literally as expensive as the car that we started with. I mean, obviously the race car was, the finished product was much more expensive, but the base cost of the car was the cost of this little carbon box. And
Mm-hmm.
now, of course, they've come down in price because the technology moves on. Um, but you're right. Some guy could come out with this really neat Kevlar composite tub, and if he hand lays it up himself and can prove the geometry and the science, and he autoclaved it. I know a guy that built an autoclave. I don't recommend it. It's dangerous, but guys do it. And if a guy does that, more power to him. If he can
Yeah.
if he can do a $300,000 job for 15 grand,
Yeah.
you're awesome. So,
Yeah. But I mean, the tech stuff, that's a subject of a whole meeting on
I think,
those parameters, and
well,
neither one
first
of
you got to
us
have a comp
being,
board.
yeah, neither one of us being engineers,
Yeah.
we can have some ideas, but we're going to need the people to do, to say, hey, you need this much carbon or this much steel tube, or the wall thickness has to be whatever. So I mean, that's a separate thing. I think the one thing that we could accomplish coming out of this meeting is coming up with a mission statement that a majority of people would agree on without too much bloodshed, and kind of set a direction.
Well, I think again, I like the mission statement of it needs to be an affordable series for aircraft, not only that a caveman can create in a cave, but also we can also fit in the artist. So
Yeah.
everything in between.
Yeah.
Um, and I think as a mission statement, that's pretty good. We want obviously fun, safe flying. We can add in all the filler, but basically what we want is we want a small bore racing series
Mm-hmm.
that most people that want to do it can participate in it.
Yeah.
And you don't have to be a 15,000 hour airline pilot. You don't have to
Yeah.
be a stockbroker
Yeah.
with $1 million in the bank. You don't have to do any of that. So I think
And
that's a great mission statement.
and that
Um,
and also that it's an engine that, I mean, at least for in the beginning, anybody in the United States can, order one of those engines new,
mhm,
or get one off of a tractor or a water pump or whatever they use all that
sure.
for, without very much difficulty. I can't speak for people in different countries, and I don't want to appear, snobby that they can't participate, but I just don't know how many Briggs or Kohler V twins are in Madagascar compared to Mississippi.
So there's that guy in Australia, and I
Tippy.
can't remember his name, but he's not TP, the guy that does
Oh,
the engines, but the other guy who runs the Lightning Bug, and
oh
he
yeah,
ran that at Reno several times, and he is a turbine guy. I think he builds a turbine
yeah,
engine of some
mhm,
kind,
yeah,
and so I think this is something that he would be really interested in, because his Lightning Bug, you could actually power that with a really small bore engine. and it's got such a small area. We were talking about that a year ago, I think 2 years ago. So yeah, I mean, again, from rocket scientist to caveman, we're in there. And then I think the next step is we need to have the mission statement's good. I think we need to start thinking about a loose comp board of some kind. It needs to have a couple of different, and this probably needs to be discussed over the next 2 weeks. We need to get off the engine discussion a little while because people are just going crazy with belt drives and PSRUs, and we need to stop all of the engine discussion and strictly talk about if we're going to have a comp board, we need a couple of good engineers. We need someone that understands competition and cheating. We need a couple of those guys. You need you need a good couple of good pilots that actually fly and understand the air. Where's a pilot going to be able to do with this? If we give you this, what does that mean? And maybe not, and maybe the pilots could be substituted for some safety guys that AMPs that have been out there a long time, or guys that have that just understand the safety aspect of the game. And I think you probably need 6 or 8 guys, girls, whatever, to be on the comp board to come up with all the approved designs. What are we looking at as far as actual safety parameters? I agree with Jay Vliet. I wouldn't want to see header tanks. I would want to see wing tanks.
I want the gas out of the cockpit. Absolutely. Right. That's one of the things that scared the crap out of me in Formula One was having that fuel tank in between
right over your leg,
the engine exhaust. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
The fact is, having the extra weight and complexity of a fuel pump, whether that be electric or diaphragm or whatever, I think that's something we got to swallow to keep that fuel out of the cockpit.
And I agree with 100%. I agree 100% with that. And I think that, and then probably we need at least 2 guys on the comp board that know how to write rules, that are very good at saying, this is what the engineers say this, these guys say this, and they just write
that's where Leon comes in, because he was on an ASTM committee, which, I've got a lot of weird technical writing experience, but I've never been on that kind of a committee. So
yeah,
he's maybe much better positioned to do that than me, speaking only for myself.
I've been on the other side of that. Basically, I considered my job in as a team owner, my job really was to read the rule book and figure out how far I could push it without breaking it.
Yeah.
That's exactly what my job was. I took it very seriously. I read the rule book and I read it again and I read it again. And then I sat down and I thought about, well, I can do this and it says I can do that. And so I was protested a lot. I was accused of cheating many, many times. I never received, I received one penalty, but it was a ride height penalty because we went off-roading and the exhaust tore loose and it was hanging 1/4 of an inch down. It was the only penalty I was ever assessed in 20 some odd years. So, but I pushed the envelope and they looked at me very hard every single time I showed up, and they should have, because that's the name of the game. If you're not pushing the envelope, why be there?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I think the comp board is really the net. We need a comp board, and then you can and what the comp board decides, that dictates what the engine rules need to be. So if the comp board says it's going to be a 350-pound plane, then that's what the engine needs to pull around. And then you have, right now, all the engine discussion to me, I can't even. I stopped reading it because it was just a bunch of just like this and that and back.
No, I disagree. It's important because
it is.
There's different V-twins and there's advantages to the reduction gears and the belt drives and all that, and that's all that's all valid, and I would take some of those engine experts' opinion over mine.
Oh,
But
well,
that should not supersede or push aside the rest of it that could be even more important.
again, I think that engine rules are really important once everything else is defined, because you can hang any engine off the front of it, right? It's just going to bolt on, bolt off. There may be some different aspects that you need to. Some engines may need a PSRU. Some engines may need an ignition. That some engines may have a bad ignition, and you just need to know that you need to replace that before you ever put it in the air, right? And I'm trying to think. I have a lawnmower that had an engine on it that had a known ignition problem, and before we ever did anything with it, the first thing the dealership told me is, go use it until the break-in period's over, then bring it back, and we'll change the ignition out for I think it was a Honda one or whatever, and it'll run forever after that. But the factory ignition was junk, and it was just plastic and would come apart.
Yeah.
So, there's things like that that's going to be.
That's all detail stuff, though. That's
all detail stuff, and there's things like that that's going to be important. It is all important, but it's not important now. What's important now is to decide the direction, and the only way that I see that we can do that is to establish a competition board that gets together and talks this stuff out, and we can do it the same way. I think this is the next step. These informal meetings are great, but the next step is we get a comp board together and we move forward. And I don't know how, and I'm certainly do not want to be in charge of any of that. I think I nominate Leon since he's not here, and he's an easy target. I nominate him to be the guy to do that and to start the process of establishing who and why people are on the competition board, and then let's have some, if we need to elect them or if we just appoint them, or
can we tell Leon that he was elected by unanimous vote at this meeting?
Yeah, he was. He absolutely was. I think we're both on the same page there. And
he has, I believe, unless what I know is incorrect, he's got direct experience with that stuff. And anyway, but yeah, having the mission statement works. Establishing an overall competition board. I don't know if we needs to be complicated enough to have an engine board and an airframe board and
not yet
landing
down the road
and all that crap. Not now, but eventually we might.
This is the way I see this, is that even the mission statement is just kind of nebulous. It can still be defined further and refined, but without a designated group of people who are putting things on paper, even to bring to a vote to the masses, which probably isn't, I would put it out for feedback and evaluation, and then I don't know. I'm glad I'm not the one in charge of this mess, but Leon's going to do a great job because I think he has the skills for this. I don't know that I do, but I've watched competition. I've been involved in all kinds of competitions, and I've watched groups fail and I've watched them succeed. The ones that succeed, always, they get that plan together and they just start at the big end and they just keep narrowing it down. They just keep, bringing that focus in where you start out with just a loose competition board. What are we going to do? How are we going to do it? What's it got to weigh? How fast are we going to go? All that kind of thing. And then once you have the airframes designated and a method to bring in custom airframes like you were talking about, I like that. Once you have all that established, okay, so where are they going to race? Okay, well, we're going to have, pylons. Well, we want to keep those. Well, do we want solo events? Sure, why not? Cross country. Well, how do we get these airplanes to do cross country? Is cross country for these airplanes 50 miles? Is it 100 miles? Is it is it 75 miles? Who knows? I don't know.
The answer to all of that is yes.
Right.
I mean, that's all. Actually, one of the things that I'm taking out of this conversation, especially talking about all these different types of competition with this,
Yeah.
what you were saying, 50 miles, 75 miles, etc. What I think we're doing, what we should be doing is we should be specifying a class of competition airplane that, although the primary bread and butter of it is pylon racing, a miniaturized version of pylon racing, it should be designed from the start to allow exploration of these different types of venues, efficiency racing, cross country racing, point to point racing, fuel efficiency, all that. So what we're doing is we are creating a competition aircraft class, but there are two or three different categories of
Yeah.
racing that can
I like
happen
that.
within that class, whether they're racing a straight line by yourselves on the internet with data streaming to where everybody can tell whether you're cheating or not. Uh,
That's going to happen regardless.
yeah, or pylons in front of an air show crowd.
Right.
But the doing it with the same airplane and having us nail down the airplane, that I think is widening out the demographic and the number of people that we're going to get involved in this greatly.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, you're going to have a bunch of people all the people the people like yourself that are interested in quickies, for example, and the guys out there that have the single place quickies, the original,
Mm-hmm.
V-twin powered quickies.
Mm-hmm.
All of those people are going to go gaga over this and go, well, yeah, I don't have any interest in pylon racing, but for me to start with 5 gallons and I can get from, Vegas to Bonneville on 5 gallons faster than the next guy, hell yeah, I'm down for that. The fact that the class of racing allows, or the class of aircraft allows those two different types of races to happen without interfering with each other, to me, that's a magic thing.
Yeah.
That's a big deal to me.
Yeah. Actually, I talked to a quickie driver the other day. His quickies not together at the moment, but which seems to be very
A common occurrence.
common. Apparently, there's a shortage of those Kohler motors, and he's not repowered, and he needs to, I guess. But I talked to him the other day, and he's like, "Man, I'd really like to do it." He's like, when he's had his quickie forever. And I guess he used to fly in farms around somewhere in the Midwest. I want to say it was Nebraska, but I could be misremembering it. I don't remember what he said, and he loved flying around trees. I mean, he was pylon racing by himself because he had lots of time
Yeah.
and one seat in the airplane. So it's not really, and he's in the middle of Nebraska or Iowa or Illinois, wherever they grow a lot of corn, and the only thing out there is nothing. So, and he was like, "Yeah, I would really like to do that." He's like, "I might even hang something new off of the old quickie." And I said, well, "Yeah, you might actually get 40 horsepower now instead of 18 or 20 or whatever it was."
I saw a video years ago. I think I mentioned this, of a quickie with, I think it was a 447 or a 503 on the front of it, and it was screaming. It was going as faster than what I think these racers are going to do. So the existing quickie airframes that are out there, with the exception of any safety stuff, because I think you're sitting on the fuel tank in a quickie. I don't know about the original one, but the 2-seat ones, I know you are.
I think so. I don't know because they were. I don't know because I've never thought about that. I've never even seen anyone put fuel in a quickie.
I know one of them. I don't know whether it was the Q2 or the Q1. You're basically putting the gas into the center section of the wing under your knees, under your calves.
Well, the Dragonfly, the seats are the fuel tank.
Yeah. So that I would fight like hell to not have that in this class.
Yeah.
Simply from a safety and liability, and we don't want to hurt anybody end of it. But other than that, the quickie itself, the existing quickies that are out there, and I know there's quite a few single place quickies out there. There's a possibly a ready airframe, possibly.
I think that you would need to, the way that the way the Quickie is with the wheels out on the canard, their ground handling is not the best. So if you were going to take off next to somebody else, it could be, I don't know. It would depend on how the start ends up being. I just, and there's
My,
no real good way of changing that on
no,
the
there.
Quickie.
Well, the if you'll forgive the drift in the conversation,
Sure.
I strongly favor the air start, and this is from a guy who did
Okay.
the standing starts in Formula One. To me, that was one of the more dangerous parts of the race, uh, and the stress factor was pretty high. And there had been a couple of accidents and people running off the runway and mid-airs on the ground before they were in the air and all that sort of stuff. And when you see the air starts that they did with the Unlimited and the T6s and all that, yes, it required somebody else in an airplane. It was Bob Hoover at Reno, famously, who did this for years. But it's quite a bit safer, and it eliminates it adds excitement. I think the air starts are every bit as exciting for the crowd as the ground starts, uh, and I believe it's safer. You know,
Yeah.
I'd
I mean,
talk to other air racers about it and see whether everybody else felt the way that I felt.
I
But
mean,
that would make a much bigger difference in terms of uh, the type of airport that you could take off at. Because when we did Formula One, you had to have 100-foot wide runway.
right.
Well, what if you don't have that?
Yeah. What if you only got 40?
Yeah, and the fact that you could do an air start, and the thing is, anybody with an RV6 with these airplanes could be your air boss or your air start guy.
Yeah.
You,
Yeah.
so you don't
Absolutely.
need a yellow P-51 like they did in Unlimited. So
Yeah. No,
that to me
that's all.
opens up.
Those are solid points right there. That's
We
we should
all
have covered that earlier. That's
and, and we all have radio. What the Formula One started before there were all airplanes had radios. Well, now you've got a little handheld radio. I got one here somewhere that are this big,
hmm
you know. So
hmm
there's no excuse for not being able to have the radio in the airplane. All of this stuff with this color flag means this and that color flag means that. You know, uh, I'd just soon have somebody scream at me on the radio, "Hey, get off the course! Your airplane's on fire. You're the only guy that doesn't see it." That to me that's an improvement in
Yeah.
safety.
Yeah. No, all that's actually really valuable information because I believe you're right. I hadn't thought about an air start because all I've really seen have been the Formula V drag race starts
Mhm.
and where they do two at a time. And so I hadn't and I guess it's technically an air start. They're just launching two at a time because they're small. They're small airplanes. But not doing a standing or drag race start might be the way to go.
And one other, this is an advantage on the technical side that has nothing to do with safety,
hmm
or very little to do with safety. If you have when you do a standing start, like Formula One did, and the biplanes,
hmm
you all of a sudden now you've got a propeller pitch issue. You want a very high propeller pitch because you're trying to get 230 miles an hour on the pylons. But if it takes 8,000 feet to get off the ground and everybody's a mile ahead of you because you're waiting for that prop to get up on step, well, the air
Yep.
start eliminates all that. You
hmm
you you might take a lot longer than the next person to take off, but your prop is optimized for the race course essentially, uh,
Sure.
and which means that you're putting in some cases less load on the engine. You're not you don't have a prop that lets you accelerate on the ground competitively, and now you're 400 RPM over what you really want to be up in the air. You know, so
hmm
that's part of it. To me, that should be explored and discussed. I don't want to be the only voice on that, but I'd like to see
Yeah,
more.
this is all comp board kind of stuff. This is exactly the kind of conversations a comp board needs to be having, and and we need to establish one. I think that's the next step. Leon will probably disagree. He's kind of doing baby steps, but I think you got to establish a comp board. You've got to the next thing is you've got to establish approved designs so that somebody that's interested in building one can start looking at plans and pricing material and talking to seeing which one of his buddies is getting a divorce so he can move into his garage and all of that kind of thing. You've got to you got to plan if you're going to build an airplane, you it's if you're going to build an air race series, somebody's got to build airplanes because there's not enough existing airplanes that fit what we're trying to do. There's designs, but I don't know that there's enough. I mean, obviously the Quickie, I had thought of that, but there aren't very many of those out there left. So,
how many single place Quickies are out there flying that you're aware of, or close to flying?
That I know of, I know of two. One that's being built in California near you, Vacaville. One, there's one in Colorado that was flying, but it may have had an incident.
Okay.
And there's one here in Tennessee that is an unbuilt kit. It was for sale. I don't know if it's sold. If it's sold, who knows where it is now.
Okay. Well, okay.
Not many of them.
Well,
the guy in Nebraska has his, but I don't know where he is now. I know the engine's out of it, and I don't know I don't know if he's planning on putting in because I don't know enough about what goes on the front of that. I know it's a Onan Kohler generator motor, but I thought it was only like 18 horsepower, so I thought should be easy for him to repower it. But I guess it really, for whatever reason, is not. He's not.
Originally, it was an 18 horsepower Onan. That's what Bert, did in the very beginning. I don't know if there's anything weird about that particular engine that makes it harder to put something else on. But
I don't know. It could just be lazy.
The point is, you could be, if you had a Quickie with that Onan engine on it and the engine's all burned up or whatever, even if you have to modify the firewall a little bit to put a 40 horse V-twin on it, that you're way ahead of the game versus starting with a clean sheet of paper.
Sure.
Same thing with the Hummelbirds. I would love to see one of the engineers in our group take a better, thinner airfoil and design a retrofit wing that any of the maybe 40 or 50 or however many Hummelbirds are out there could bolt on to a Hummelbird fuselage, and at least have the fuselage and the tail and whatever and the wing attached stuff and the controls, and have a faster airplane if they wanted to. I understand from one of the guys that I had some private conversations with that the original Hummelbird and the Watson Windwagon had a faster, thinner airfoil than the Hummel Ultra Cruiser and now the H5 model. So maybe the old original wing, if that's the plans and parts and whatever are still out there, that kind of. There weren't very many Watson Windwagons built, but a Hummelbird can almost be a reverse modified back to the size of a Windwagon. It's the same size airplane, but the pilot's just sitting upright in it. On the Windwagon, the pilot's half out of the airplane. On the Hummelbird, there's a big hump over him. But you with not too much effort, I think you could make that a more recumbent position to get a lower drag airplane out of it. I just don't know what the speed range that the Hummelbird is designed for in terms of structure and flutter, and that's something
they claim that they cruise at they claim the H5 cruises at, I want to say, 140, 150. Let me use a little Google here. Let me see.
Well, that's with the full size Volkswagen on it, I believe.
Yeah, that's with 80 horsepower.
Right.
Yeah, it says 60 to 85 horsepower, V&E 150, cruise 100 to 130.
Okay.
So, but that's a really thick wing. I didn't realize that's how
Yeah, it's not
That
quite
thing is massive.
twice, but it's 1.5 times as thick as it ought to be for this type of purpose.
Right.
One of the things I'd like to, and again, this is a comp board thing. One of the
Yeah.
things I'd like to incorporate is that we don't want 7 and 8 and 9% airfoils in this, um, because the stall speed and the like you said earlier, the amount of energy in an engine out standard off airport forced landing, not a racing midair, but just an engine blow
Mhm.
up. The amount of energy in that airplane, I'd rather keep to a more survivable level.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's going to cost a little bit of speed, but you know that's a call that I'd
I think it's an
really
easy
focus.
call to make.
Yeah,
It's an easy call to
yeah,
make.
it's supposed to be fun.
Yeah. Cheap fun,
Yep,
as they say.
yeah, but the 18% on that Hummel Ultra Cruiser, that's a non-starter for me.
Yeah. I mean, somebody somewhere will make a business out of selling,
Mhm.
9%
Yeah.
Hummel wings, or ribs at least, a wing kit.
Well, no, not 9. I'm saying I think it should be somewhere in the 13
13.
range minimum.
Okay.
And there's some good enough airfoils out there that at 13%, or some number, the airplane can be light enough because your spar doesn't have to be that heavy. Uh,
Right.
and you have enough camber and a mild enough airfoil that you're not looking at trying to dead stick an F-104, when if you have an engine out.
All good stuff. Well, I think, we keep kind of talking around the same issues, so it may
Yeah,
be time to call it an evening.
good
I was
enough for me.
hoping I've been kind of dragging this along, waiting for Leon or McCrae to show. Some of the late guys to show up, but apparently it's just us two,
Okay.
which is fine. It was a good discussion. It was actually really enlightening on a bunch of levels, and I do think that um, I won't do it tonight. I'll do it in the morning. I'll make a post, and I'll send. What I'll do is I'll send Leon a private message, and basically just say, this is what we came up with. We like what you said. We came up. We think a good mission statement would be, that it's an affordable, very open class for anyone from a caveman to an artist
Mhm.
to be able to participate in, and maybe not phrased quite like that. I'm being very a little bit facetious, but um, and then the next step I think is to designate, elect, impress. I don't know. Shanghai maybe too strong a word, but we need a comp board, and the comp board needs to meet a couple of times, at least a couple of times, and really talk and work, and maybe message a bunch back and forth, and really work through. First, I think you need to establish a list of issues, and I like what you've said, where about you've got a minimum weight, you've got a minimum safety requirement, you have specific safety items, fuel tank in the wing roots. You want the safety capsule. You want minimum wing percentage. All the things that you talked about. I think that's all the safety stuff is first, and then you pattern the plane after that.
Mhm.
You can approve some designs. You can then approve design. Establish a process for approving design modifications. So if you have a Hummel and you want to put a 12% wing on it, or whatever, then there needs to be a process to get that stamped. Yep,
Mhm.
it's good. And so just work down the list, right? Process for um, you know non-plans built airplanes, right? So just and all of it, right? So
Yeah.
and a process for sandbagging, an appropriate process for sandbagging an airplane at home. How you do that. A list of maneuvers that you will need to be able that you may be called upon to demonstrate prior to the event. So you might show up and the tech guys say, you know what, I don't know about this, and you may have to go out and prove that you can do 40-degree turn at whatever. And
No,
if you
I'd like you to take the word may or possible out of that sentence.
okay,
They made us do that in the Formula One. I'm sure they did it in the other classes too, because as has been pointed out, you get into wake turbulence going around a turn, and your airplane can be flipped over. If all the airplanes are the same size, it doesn't matter if you're flying Quicksilver ultralights or 747s. The amount of wake turbulence from the airplanes in front of you could easily be enough to disrupt the flight path of the airplane
yeah,
unexpectedly. And you needed in Formula One, and I'm sure the V guys did the same thing. You need to be able to demonstrate that if your airplane gets flipped upside down, you have the control authority and the presence of mind to roll it back out within half a second or whatever it is. They made me demonstrate it. They made me demonstrate a 6G pull to make sure the wings weren't going to come off, and a VNE dive of approaching 300 miles an hour.
well, I think that there has to be a list of
Yeah.
required maneuvers
Yeah.
that you must be able and willing
Yep.
to pull off, and
Yep.
on demand, obviously. I mean, and maybe not every event, but
To qualify the airplane and the pilot.
yeah,
They only made me do it once because
Mhm.
the sport that I was in was small enough to where all the people remembered. And it's
Mhm.
not like I could show up somewhere and lie my way out of it and say, oh, yeah, this airplane's proven. Now, if the
Right,
sport gets big enough, obviously. But
right,
in Formula One, it was the same tech guys looking like, oh, yeah, we looked at that guy in that airplane. He's
right,
okay. Or he's
right.
passed.
And so, but all of those processes have to be lined out, written down, copied and pasted from other rule books, that kind
Mhm.
of thing.
Yep.
So that I think honestly has to be the next step, because without a basis, this is all just smoke and mirrors and talk, and we're never going to get anywhere. Comp board makes it more real, and actual real will be saying, hey, this is what you need to build,
Mhm.
and
The-
then people will start building, or they won't. So
I did. If you hadn't seen it, I did post some of that stuff in one of the many threads that we've got on our discussion forum about
yeah, we need some cleanup there too. We
uh,
need to.
6G pulls and the rolling inverted and all that. I did post that from my own experience. I
I
don't know if
like
you
I
saw it or
like
not.
all of that. I believe that you should be. I believe that there should be a path for a low time pilot to be able to gain and
Mhm.
demonstrate the skills needed to race in traffic. And I think that there needs to be a qualification for pilots who maybe every year have to demonstrate that they can still do these maneuvers, right? Because skills degrade.
Mhm.
You may not have flown for six. We don't know. You may not have
Yeah.
flown for 6 months. It may not be something you're capable of today.
Mhm.
So, and so I think that skills on demand is a great thing, and I think that that's something that I'm actually going to write that down because I'll forget. Um, uh, and so, yeah, I think we'll get all this together, and maybe we can get one of the mods to clean up some of the threads, because I can't keep up with
Yeah.
the various things, and that's next step. Let's get a comp board together. Let's get some discussions going, and let's get some
Okay.
rules made. So,
Well, I can talk to one of the moderators on the forum to see if he's
mhm.
willing to go clean that stuff up.
Well, at least take a look at it,
Yeah.
because it seemed it to me because I'm not able to check. I've been super busy, and I haven't been able to check the board very regularly lately. So when I looked in there today, I was like, "Wow, this is we've got like 3 different engine threads and
Yeah.
PSRU threads, and I was like, wow, this is getting get out of
Yeah. It's a
control."
little unwieldy.
Yeah, I think so.
All right.
All
Well,
right.
I'll talk to Topaz, who's one of our moderators, a
Yes.
friend of mine, and
Hmm.
I'll see what his suggestion is on cleaning that stuff up because he's done that on other threads before. And then you talk to Leon, and
Yep.
see if you can put a stun gun on him or something like that to get him to participate on this with us.
I'm hoping that he accepts his forced nomination
Yeah.
and and runs with it.
Yeah.
So Bill, great talking to you.
All
It's
right.
been a
Well,
good meeting, I think, and I'm really happy that we did get something moved forward, even though it's just the two of us. It's very easy, actually, to just move things right along. So
well, I do want more participants, but for now,
I
I appreciate that you set all this stuff up with the streaming and all that. That's
yeah,
beyond my
if it's
capability.
yeah, we're gonna have to harass all of the technologically timid and just tell them
Yeah.
this is like super easy and you don't have to do anything. You don't have to join anything. You probably, if you have a Gmail account, I think you can comment with
Mhm.
uh,
The
on
YouTube.
the YouTube. So that's easy. You don't even have to actually be on the screen. You can just comment
Well,
and we can
the
read
other,
it.
yeah, the other thing is that on this StreamYard thing, they could be on here and not say anything. They could mute
Hmm.
themselves and just be there,
Yeah,
but have their face up on the screen, like, oh
yeah.
yeah, that guy's listening. And then
Hmm.
if they get motivated to say something or not say something, it's
They
optional,
can
just
mute
like any
themselves.
other, just like a Zoom call.
Yeah,
So,
and um, and I can, they can also sit in the lobby and just watch.
mhm.
Like when you came in, you can see the screen. You're
Yeah.
not you're not there. So
All right.
yep.
I will see you in a couple of weeks and we'll be
Yeah.
on the forum between now and then.
Yeah, well, I'll try and be a little more active over the next week or so.
All right. We'll see you,
All
Don.
right.
Have a good one.
Yeah, you too, Bill. Good night.